Welcome to Crime Stoppers. I'm your host, Chip Brown. Heartland Crime Stoppers is a community-based program designed to help law enforcement solve crimes by providing a way for the public to phone in tips anonymously and receive cash rewards of up to $5,000 for information that leads to an arrest, the recovery of stolen property, or the recovery of illegal drugs. Heartland Crime Stoppers is funded through the State of Florida Office of the Attorney General Crime Stoppers Trust Fund and through donations from the community. Citizens and local businesses make Crime Stoppers work. On today's show, we will talk with Brian Haas, State Attorney for the 10th Judicial Circuit. The office represents the people of the state of Florida in all criminal prosecutions in Polk, Highlands, and Hardee Counties. In addition, the office advises the grand juries for those three counties and provides representation for the Florida Department of Revenue in child support enforcement matters. Brian Haas grew up in Polk County and is a 1993 graduate of Barstow High School. He received his college degree from Flagler College in St. Augustine and his law degree from the University of Florida. Upon graduation from law school, Mr. Haas returned to Polk County and began his career as a prosecutor. Mr. Haas, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you.
Always good to have you back. It's always so interesting, and just so many things are going on in Polk County. And I know we talked about some impacts with the going on today, and it's really, I mean, the COVID-19 has impacted so many businesses and the way that people operate. And the state attorney's office is certainly no different, is it?
No, that's right. You know, COVID-19 has impacted every part of our society, and the court system is not an exception. We've been impacted significantly by COVID-19. You look at the impact on just our employees and their own lives and what they're doing, but then on the system as a whole, the ability to have court, to have people come into the courthouse, to have their court case heard, it's all been impacted. We know for sure that the crime has not stopped. Criminals don't care whether there's a pandemic or not. They're going to keep on committing crimes.
They certainly do.
So our job and our responsibility to keep the citizens safe, it's never stopped. And so we've kept up with that as best we can, but we've had to fundamentally change some of the things that we've done and how we do them, simply because we've got to make sure that our employees are safe, the judges are safe, and the people who have business before the courts are safe. And we've come up with some pretty good ways of dealing with it.
Now, we're not just talking that making them wash their hands and sanitizer and wear a mask. I mean, you have really had a number of procedural changes.
Right. You know, the typical way you would have a court hearing would be everybody loaded into a courtroom. Sometimes you may have 100 people in that courtroom, sitting very closely, packed in there for several hours at a time. It's an unpleasant experience, but with the volume that we have to deal with, that's the way that it normally would go. Once COVID hit back in March, court appearances basically stopped, except for some very rare exceptions. So they were on hold for a while until we came up with a plan of how to make sure that we can have court as best we can, but keeping everyone safe. So we were able to set up a remote courthouse thanks to the help of Sheriff Judd and our county commission, who are just great partners in what we do. We're using temporarily the former Sheriff's Administration building here in Bartow, and they constructed little remote courtrooms where an attorney and his or her client can go in, and they're remoted across the street to the judge, and they have the court hearing. Our prosecutors are in their offices, so really no one is in the courtroom with the judge except for the judge and maybe a clerk. The clerks are often appearing remote as well. So we have a system where there's 7 or 8 rooms over there, and so that can handle quite a few people coming through there. They're all screened when they come in, and they're socially distanced. So we've had really good success thanks to the partnership that we've had. Now, it's not the same as appearing in person in front of a judge, but it's about as good as it's going to get under these circumstances. So we've been able to keep the cases moving, at least through procedural hearings and things like that.
Now, you had to mention the impact it's had on jury trials.
Right.
Tell us a little bit how that has impacted.
Well, our typical jury trial procedure under prior times would be on Monday morning. We call in, the Clerk Butterfield would call in several hundred jurors, and they would be packed into a jury assembly room and be sent to various courtrooms and packed in very tightly there.
I think a number of us can relate to that. I know I've had my time over there
Right,
as well.
right.
So.
And given the challenges of the number of cases that we have to deal with and the limited space across the street, the clerks and the judges do a really good job of trying to manage that, but it's tough. It's a lot of times not a very pleasant experience. But those old ways of doing things, we can't, under the current conditions, do that. So we have not been able to have a jury trial since March, and that has really impacted the way we do business and how we do things, because ultimately we need to be able to try jury trials. And if we don't have that ability, then there's really not a lot of incentive for some of the defendants to move their cases along, because there's that finality that isn't there. So we're very anxious about getting the jury trial started back up, and I think we'll be able to do that pretty quick.
Yeah, that would certainly be good. I noticed looking at some of your stats, I mean, you handle almost 4,400 cases a year, that your office does, with normally 322, I guess, jury trials, and so that is a big impact.
Well, that's true, and our numbers are up, and in a given year, I think this year we're probably expecting to handle well over 10,000, maybe 11,000 felonies and 20 to 30,000 misdemeanor and misdemeanor criminal traffic. So we have not stopped receiving cases, obviously, and we have not stopped filing the cases. Part of what we do is we take the cases in from law enforcement, we review them, the evidence, apply the law, and if the evidence is there, we file it. So our attorneys have been at the courthouse ever since March working to get these cases filed, and they have, and some have been resolved and some are waiting. So there is a huge backlog of cases, but they've been very busy.
Absolutely. Well, it's amazing, the steps that not only, of course, state attorneys had to do, but law enforcement and private business, and the clerk of the court, because it is just, as a friend of mine used to say, where you are is where you're at. So you just have to kind of deal with it.
You have to deal with it because we have a job to do, and that's to protect our citizens and keep them safe, and we're committed to doing that. I also feel an obligation and a responsibility to keep my employees safe and make sure that they're being taken care of. So we keep a very close eye on the numbers and how things are going in our community. My preference is to work from the courthouse, from the office, and we've done that for the most part. We've had wonderful help from the health department. Dr. Jackson's been very helpful to us. And from the very beginning, we followed the guidelines. We have very strict protocols in place. We screen everybody that comes into the office. Masks are required. When you're inside the courthouse, that's by order of the chief judge, and we obviously comply with that. So it's worked. Of course, like every business, I think we've had some examples where we've had employees that have had COVID, but we've managed it the best we can.
Yeah, no matter how careful you are, there's always going to be
Yep.
that case that it just happens.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Now, I know that you have a number of services, diversion programs that are available through your office. Tell us a little bit about some of those diversion programs.
Well, one of the things that I think is important to do is make sure that we're focusing our resources on the cases that really impact the public. And when I say that, I mean violent crimes, drug trafficking, cases where our children are being victimized, or serious grand theft cases, elderly exploitation. I want our resources to be spent on those cases, if at all possible, because those are the ones that really are a danger to society. But we have a lot of other cases that come through. They're important, but we don't always have to handle them in the same way. So we've set up some really good programs for first-time offenders, for folks that have not been through the system before, that now find themselves in some trouble, not serious trouble, but it can cause them some issues. So we've set up some diversion programs, which the goal is to make sure that they are getting the help they need, get maybe a wake-up call to quit, getting into this type of thing, whether it's a marijuana offense or driving charge, and hopefully not see them down at the courthouse anymore as defendants. So we require them to go through quite a few things, whether it's drug screenings, counseling sessions, but we also provide them with resources when they're going through our program. You may have somebody that is 20, 21 years old, and they haven't found their way yet. So we give them some resources about things that they might do in their lives to, quit violating the law. So, information on how to get your GED, maybe a trade school, some information on college, Polk State, which is a great asset in our community. Things like that. We also give them links to mental health treatment if that's an issue. So the goal is to give them some help, and we really don't want to have to deal with them again down here at the courthouse.
Yeah, that first contact is so important, and how it treats, because it might very well be just that wake-up call that they're young and impetuous, and just their decision-making isn't far-reaching. It's just for right at the moment.
And we found that also with juveniles. You have a 12 or 13-year-old. Those are tough times, and especially in these times, it's really tough to be a kid these days. So our goal there is to not saddle the kid with a record, but get involved and say, what's going on here? Why are you having contact with law enforcement officer at 2 in the morning? Something's wrong. Wrong crowd, no supervision at home, maybe a drug problem. So we want to get early intervention with these kids so they're not coming back as career criminals, because things get out of control pretty quickly. So it's very important to do that.
Brian, if you don't mind, we're going to take a break and look at some of our cases. Crime Stoppers provides a way for local law enforcement to receive information on crimes while keeping the people providing that information anonymous. These efforts increase tips, which in turn solve more crimes and identify criminals in our community. Here's a look at some of our most recent cases.
The Auburndale Police Department is seeking assistance from the public in identifying a suspect in a criminal mischief case. On August 28th, while the victim was at work, an unidentified white male cut down 8 palm trees and 1 live oak tree at the victim's residence after exiting in a vehicle pictured below, a mid-2000 Chevy Coupe with black rims. Any information would be appreciated in identifying the suspect in this case. If you can assist, please contact Officer Patty Rieger at 863-965-5555. The Haines City Police Department is looking for the public's help in obtaining information about a person who broke into multiple businesses over the weekend. The person pictured below shattered the glass before entering the Golden Dragon Chinese restaurant at 39871 US 27 and Luke's Legendary Pizza at 39867 US 27. The break-ins happened about 1:05 a.m. on Saturday morning. No money or items are currently being reported missing. Yeah, he's masked up and gloved up and has a real hat on, but hopefully someone will know who he is. This guy went into the Walmart at 7450 Cypress Gardens Boulevard on September 3rd and switched barcodes on items to the tune of $244. When asked for a receipt by the associate, it was quickly determined that his basket full of items should be more than $15. He starts to walk back with the associate. However, he turns and darts out the door. He actually trips and falls face first just outside the door. However, manages to get back up and run to a red or burgundy Nissan Sentra. The man is reported to have a Caribbean accent. Do you know the person in this picture? We're attempting to locate and identify this subject in reference to an ongoing criminal investigation. Please contact Detective Sergeant LeConte at 863-773-3265. If you have any information on any of the cases you've just seen or any information on an unsolved crime, please contact Heartland Crime Stoppers and leave an anonymous tip. The toll-free tip line is 1-800-226-TIPS. That's 8477. You can also leave an anonymous web tip by going to www.heartlandcrimestoppers.com and click on the Give a Tip tab, or by going to www.p3tips.com. Don't forget, you can download our free
P3 Tips app on your smart device. Whichever way you choose to leave a tip, you will remain 100% anonymous. If your tip results in an arrest, the recovery of stolen property, or the recovery of illegal drugs, you could be eligible for a cash reward of up to $3,000.
Welcome back to Crime Stoppers. I'm your host, Chip Brown. The 10th Judicial Circuit represents the people of the state of Florida in all criminal prosecutions in Polk, Highlands, and Hardee Counties. Joining us in the studio is State Attorney Brian Haas. Mr. Haas, thank you for sticking around.
Good to be here.
Now, just before the break, we were talking about how COVID has impacted your operations. And I know you've done a number of things, having planned when trials start back up,
Right.
and how to keep the jurors safe, because I know people, if they get jury duty, they're going to think, well, how's this going to affect me? So,
Right. We've put a lot of work into coming up with a system of how our jurors can do their job, but safety as the #1 priority. As we discussed before, we've got to be able to have jury trials because that's a really important part of our system. And so we want to make sure that when the juror comes down to the courthouse to do jury duty, that they feel safe and that their focus during that trial is on the facts and the evidence and the arguments that will be made, and then ultimately the conclusion of the trial, guilty or not guilty. So we want to make sure that they feel safe. We can't do it the way we used to, bringing everybody on the same day and having them sit around all day and come back later in the week. So we're going to move to a system that it's called pick and go, to where we select the jury on a particular day and we go right into the jury trial. So it takes a lot of advanced planning and logistics, but we feel that it's going to be easier on the jurors. It may make for a longer day, but hopefully they can get done with their service in 1 day or day and a half. And so when they come to the courthouse, they'll go through screening procedures, temperature checks and things like that to make sure that everything's good on that front. And then they'll be assigned likely to a very specific courtroom, and we'll get into the jury selection very quickly. The courtrooms look very different. There's plastic partitions up in many places. There'll be masks used throughout. And the goal is to keep the people coming in safe. So we have to deal with quite a few issues as far as making sure that it's all clean and that witnesses, when they're testifying, the jurors probably need to be able to see their expressions, how they're
Certainly.
saying things.
Yes.
And it's hard if you've got a mask and a face shield to do that. So we're coming up with plans of how to allow them to not be masked up, but testify so they can be evaluated. So it's going to be challenging. There'll probably be some things that will change once we get into it a little bit, but we're hoping in a couple of weeks we'll be able to have some jury trials and help us move some of these cases. On the other side of it, obviously the grand jury is a completely different situation from a regular trial jury. Our grand juries are in session for 6 months at a time, and we haven't been able to convene our grand jury since March. So that's been very challenging, because what folks may not realize is that when there's a first-degree murder, the grand jury is the only body that can actually issue an indictment.
Yeah. People think that that's your decision, but
Right.
it's the grand jury's
All
decision.
the other cases, right, all the other cases, we are the ones that make the filing decision. But first-degree murder, the law says it needs to be indicted by a grand jury. So we're going to have a very busy, unfortunately, grand jury very soon, because all of the first-degree murder cases from March are waiting indictment.
That people don't think about that, and certainly I hadn't either. How that impacts, just a virus or a pandemic, how it just has it's impacted everything.
The impacts have been amazing, and you think of somebody that's lost a loved one to a terrible crime like first-degree murder. They're having to pick up the pieces of their lives, and then there's this hold on the court case, because we know in our first-degree murder cases it's not going to bring the person back, but we like to think that we can hopefully provide some sense of justice to the family, and they're waiting right now even longer than they normally do, and that's pretty frustrating.
I know there's the speedy trial rule, for misdemeanors and for felonies. How is that being affected?
That's been put on hold by the Supreme Court while we're going through this. So a lot of that has been what's called tolled, and we've had some additional time to work on that. But while that's been help, the cases are just backing up on us. And on the flip side, we're also very concerned about our funding and the ability of the state to, meet its budget. Obviously, we're worried about some cuts and things like that. And it's all in the mind of having many more cases. So we got challenging times ahead.
Yeah, I just had a visualization of driving on Interstate 4, and usually traffic flows pretty well, but one little hiccup and traffic backs up for miles at a time, and in your case, months at a time.
Right, right. So we just got to take it case by case and be ready to go when we can.
Yeah. Now, I know one of the diversion programs that you talked about to me earlier was your veterans plan. Tell us what about that diversion.
That's a program I'm really excited about. It's been a great effort between the courts and the local veterans community to try to get help to our folks that have served our country in the military. And I'll just give you a scenario. You have someone that's off serving the country, whether it's here or in a foreign country. As you can imagine, that could be a very, very traumatic experience, and we know that PTSD is a real thing and it impacts folks on a very high level. So they come back and maybe they have a substance abuse problem, or maybe there's an issue with some rage or whatever it is. Sometimes the criminal system has to become involved. And so we have a program that the goal is to help the veterans that have been charged with crimes. And I don't mean very violent, serious crimes. These are more of misdemeanor types and maybe some felony cases. But we've set up a completely different docket, and they come to their own courtroom and they have pretty much their own judge. And the goal is to put them in touch with services and a mentor from the community. So when they get to court, the idea is not to figure out how long they can go to jail or what kind of convictions we can rack up. It's how can we get this person help? So there'll be someone from the VA in the courtroom that can put them in touch with medical services, mental health, and then they'll also be in the courtroom mentors who are other veterans who are doing okay at the moment. And so they'll be paired up with one of these mentors, and it's that link to that person to call if they need help or to help them. It's kind of an accountability thing too. So the program may go on for a year, and if they complete that program successfully, then they can not have a conviction for whatever it is. Yeah. We've had some really good success with it, and actually we've had some of the participants in the program who were initially charged with crimes. Now they've returned as mentors to help other people come through. So we're real excited about that.
Yeah, that's so important, because I know so many of these veterans come back and they feel kind of alone and out of their element, and they don't know where to turn, and so they turn, like you said, sometimes to alcohol or to self-medicate. And
right, and some people may say, oh, they're getting an unfair break. Well, first of all, I don't think it's an unfair break, but ultimately, if they complete the entire Veterans Court program, they end up doing a lot more of programs and court appearances and everything than they would if they just went through the regular court system. So it's a commitment on their part. It's a commitment on behalf of the court system and the VA and our local veterans. And ultimately, if they complete it, they're in a much better situation than if they would just come in and pled to the case.
And of course, those same options really are available in your other pretrial interventions. If they go first-time offenders, for certain cases, if they have, they can make restitution and do community service, and if they stay out of trouble. So that's not just available just for veterans. The veterans is a little bit different because it's just veterans.
Right.
So it's a very good program. Yeah. I know of several success stories myself.
Good.
So I did want to talk about you have a Tuesday morning tip or a Tuesday tips that you have started producing out of your office. Tell us a little bit about what's on those videos.
Well, we're trying to just give some of our folks that check our website out some ideas about some scams that we're seeing and things to watch out for. And as we discussed before, the criminals never stop. If anything, they get more creative and they take advantage of bad situations. So over the years, we've seen folks take advantage of elderly folks or people that are dependent on others for help. But we've also seen into this COVID era, people trying to prey on vulnerabilities as far as being concerned about the coronavirus and people stuck at home, So whether it's a door-to-door solicitor who's trying to, peddle a unproven remedy or a fake test or, fake stimulus checks, there's always a new scam out there. So the goal is to not scare people, but just say, be aware, be expecting that if someone's coming to your door, it very well could be a scam. And, it will happen, but if we can stop some of these scams, then, it's a good thing.
Just to be aware. And also, I don't know if a lot of our viewers know that for someone to come to your door, they need to have a permit, and there's a lot of good reasons for that.
Yeah, I mean, the system, if it's complied with, is there to protect our residents and protect the legitimate business people who are doing that solicitation. But you see it all the time, folks going through neighborhoods, and they're not permitted to do that for the most part unless they've gone through the steps, and most people don't. So you hate to get to the point where you tell folks don't even answer your door, but it's risky if you open that door, just like when you answer the phone sometimes you don't know who it is.
Yeah, they still want me to renew my my extended warranty on my car, which I've never had. So it's always interesting on that. And I know that you gave a history on one of the scams going door to door. It was a group of people who were pressure washing. Didn't have a permit, and the reason they have a permit because the guy heading it up had warrants and had been involved in other stuff. So people just need to be aware, and there's some wonderful tips on that, and they can certainly learn a lot from watching those.
Yeah, I would say we've got some great businesses here in Polk County, and check them out. Make sure that they're permitted, make sure that they're licensed. Do your homework before you hire somebody to do work on your house, because if you just do it from somebody just driving through that's not checked out, that's not permitted, you're taking a huge, huge risk. And there's limited things that can, once they leave with your money and they've done bad work, you may not even be able to track them down. And that's true with people putting in driveways or sealers or pressure washing, cleaning your roof, all of those things. It's a very dangerous thing. So work with a local business that you can trust, and you're going to be much better off.
Well, Mr. Haas, thank you for joining us today. Some great information, and we're looking forward to how the jury trials go. And I know you're anxious to get that going as well.
We are. Thank you.
The state attorney has offices in Bartow, Lakeland, Winter Haven, Wauchula, and Sebring. The 10th Judicial Circuit serves the residents of Polk, Highlands, and Hardee Counties. For more information, you can check them out on the web at www.sao10.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Crime Stoppers. Keep in mind, Heartland Crime Stoppers is an organization that helps law enforcement solve crimes through anonymous tips and monetary rewards. It encourages a cooperative partnership between law enforcement, the media, and the community to ensure security and enhance our quality of life here in Polk County. For more information, you can check us out on the web at heartlandcrimestoppers.com or follow us on Facebook at Heartland Crime Stoppers Florida. Until next time, keep in mind, it's a crime, and you can help make sure that they don't get away with it.